Hi, I'm Andrej. As Gaspar already told you, I fly mostly sailplanes, so I have Tilen here for backup. Tilen is helping us a lot with the development of Audi 3, so if you follow him, you are going to reach the goal, just not today. So, Matjaž also tells me that he only has 1 hour of time for recording, so we must not be long. So the question is, what information do I need to reach the goal from Kobala, from Kobryški Sto, from wherever we start? Basically, all of your gliding instruments, sea pilots and Browningers, they have a lot of information. They have a lot of small now boxes that you can choose, which tell you how fast to go, where to go, how high you have to be, how high you will be at the end, and then you are not that high in the end. You are sometimes higher, sometimes not so high, and it can be a pretty challenging task to find out exactly which data is the one that you need. Of course, one option is that you simply put all of the information which you have on the screen, so you are sure that you are not missing anything. But in reality, of course, you will also not find the information which you need when you are low and when you are stressed, when you have to find that thermal, and then you need to know if you have enough altitude to reach the goal or not. So, for sure, having everything on the display is one option, but it's not the best option. I would like to walk you through one very simple task, which was flown here a couple of weeks ago at the Slovenian Nationals and Croatian Nationals. It was flown from Kobala. It was pretty similar to what you have flown today. It was flown from Kobala up and down and up and down. So it should be something that you can relate to today. I will just switch shortly to CU, where I can show you. This is something that we did not check. So there we go. This is the task that was flown from Kobala up here and down and up and down and up and down and back to finish. Pretty simple. I have chosen just a few pilots. Of course, it doesn't make sense to watch everybody what they did and how they went, so I chose about 20 pilots so we can have a look at what they were doing. There's obviously a leading group over here right after start. There's some people who stayed behind. They are racing towards the first turn point. They turn it more or less together, they go back. Of course, Primož is in front, which he likes to do. They are racing, and then when they go into the higher mountains, there are some very interesting lines which some pilots have chosen. For example, Primož went low and fast. Some people went on, some people stayed on course, and for example, Aljaž, he took a big detour, which I'm sure was very scenic, but didn't end up very well. So, and they go on, and then at the end, Ferga and Primož, they make a race to the finish line, and just at the end, Primož wins, Ferga is second, so it was a pretty nice flying day for some of these guys, and I can see that many of these guys are here. So. This is basically what we are going to just walk through. A day starting at Kobala, going up and down this valley with a nice finish, with many people in finish, but not everybody. The question is, which information do you need to make a good start? What is a good start? A good start would be a start where you are as high as possible on the starting line, at exactly the moment when the start line opens. It sounds simple, but for some of these guys, which stayed here, it was already difficult just to get up, let alone to be at the right time, at the right place. Which I'm sure was also a challenge today, or at least it was interesting. So, first a little bit of strategy before start, especially if you have a lot of time. Relax, fly the ridge, get to know the weather, get to know the winds. And then, before the start line opens, get up and stay up. Get together with the group and start together with the group. You have to understand how starting on with entry or starting with exit works, so you have to know before you take off. It's a very good idea to take 10 minutes or a little more to study how the start will work, from which direction you will expect, where do you expect to find the lifts that are going to put you in the right position. And of course, have a plan for the first few kilometers. Have a plan which valley you will choose. If you can climb so high, you will probably stay on this ridge. If you can climb higher, you'll probably go into the higher mountains. Just have a plan. So all of this was done without any information that you could get from your instruments. This was just strategy and tactics for the day. And when you think about what information is important for me to make a decision, okay, I'm high now, the start line is there, I want to fly there and be there exactly at the right moment. You have the distance where you have to go. You have the distance, for example, if you would be here, and you would like to start here because this was an exit type start sector, and the first turn point was somewhere higher in the valley. So if you are here, you would like to be here, so this distance. When you know the distance, you can calculate how much altitude you are going to lose from where you are to the starting point. You also know how long it will take you to glide from where you are to the start line, etc. There's different things which you can do. You can have just the distance and you can calculate in your head. I will be flying at about 40 kilometers per hour, which is so many meters per second, which means I will need so many seconds to reach from here to there, or I will be doing so many kilometers per minute, so I need 4 minutes to get there, so I will start just before the start line opens, so 4 minutes before that I will go to the start line. Of course you can do it in the head. You can also have your instrument show you the speed which you need to achieve from where you are to where you want to start, and then you say, okay, when this speed will be about 40 kilometers per hour, then I will go and then I will just fly along the start sector, and when the gate opens, I will just stop. Of course, you can also have just the information about when the start opens, and again you do all of the math in your head. But there is one now box which is available in most, if not all, of the instruments which you have. It's the time to go now box. Which what it does is it knows your distance to where you want to start. It knows when the start line opens. It knows how much time you will need to get there. So it's telling you, okay, stay where you are. For example, if you are climbing here, and this is the last climb before the starting point, it tells you, okay, you can stay here for 2 more minutes and 8 seconds. And then if you go from here to there with the speed which you have set up, which can be 40 kilometers per hour typically, if you start in 2 minutes and 8 seconds from here, you will get here exactly at the right moment. So this is just one now box which tells you exactly what to do from where you are. Everything else is you flying, you finding the thermals, you finding the best clouds, the highest cloud bases and everything. So for the start, actually, everything you need is just this one simple navbox. It's complex in what is computed behind it, but it's really simple to understand and to observe and to just follow what it's telling you. So if we have a look again here what these guys were doing. Here we can see that the guys will just switch off this three-dimensional view because the monitor is so slow. We can see that most of the guys started together nicely. Small, such a small. Such a small monitor. So we can see that the first group started together, but not everybody was so lucky, and some of the people stayed behind. So, once you have started successfully and you are with the leading group, here comes the task. Sometimes the task is complicated or long, or it has many turn points with many different radiuses. So on the task, sometimes it's possible to get lost, right? It's easier if you have a map, if you have an instrument which shows you the map, which shows you your position on the map, and maybe even it turns heading up so that when you fly in certain direction, that the direction where you're flying is up on your instrument. It helps a lot. Because visual, if you see a map with valleys, it's a lot easier to make sense of the task. On some other instruments where you don't have a color screen, there are symbols which tell you that you should fly in this direction, and after this direction you should turn left. But you need something which tells you where you are and where you need to go. So this is what you are looking for. You don't want to get lost on a pretty complex task, such as this one in the example. The optimal route, especially when the sectors are getting larger and larger, it becomes more and more interesting. For example, to fly from here to here over this turn point, the optimum point, which is the shortest route between these sectors, would be touching this sector here. Although maybe the mountains will want you to fly over here. So a good instrument will always calculate when you fly from here to here over this waypoint. A good instrument will always, whatever decision you make, it will show you the shortest route from where you are to where you want to go. And especially when the guys were flying in Bulgaria at the Worlds a few weeks ago, they were setting tasks with turn point radiuses over 20 kilometers, sometimes 30 kilometers, I think. In this case, a sector would be something like this, so really, really big. It's nice because it's easier for you to avoid thunderstorms or whatever difficult weather is ahead of you. It's easier also for the organizer because it tells you, look, you have to do this, the length of the task is this, and then it's your problem where you're going to fly. But big sectors give you many solutions. There is not just one solution. If the sectors are really small, you have to fly from here to there, and you have really limited options about what you are going to do. Imagine if a sector would be big like this. Then from here you could choose to go either on the main ridge or on the highest ridges, or if the weather is difficult there, some north wind or whatever, you can also switch to this ridge. So again, this is something that you are going to do discussing with your friends before takeoff, just imagining what you already know about the area where you are flying. So it's more tactics and strategy, what you want to do with this. And the question is, which information do you really need to complete the task? It's actually quite simple. If you have a map so you don't get lost, everything you need to go, everything you need to know is where to go. So, at least on Audi, we created, together with these guys, we created a now box which just tells you, okay, you are flying in this direction, your turn point is right here. So all you have to do is fly 15 degrees to the right from where you are, and you will reach the optimum part of the sector, of the next sector, so you can fly further. So on task, it's nice to know that the next turn point name is whatever this one is, T43015. It's nice to know. It's nice to know that you have been flying 28 kilometers per hour for the last hour. There are many things which are nice to know, but really the only thing you need to know is exactly where to go. If your instrument is telling you what the shortest route is and you trust it, all you need to know is where to go. Everything else is nice to know. So on the task, in the example, if we go on, these guys, they took some pretty interesting detours. First two turn points were easy and everybody was together, but already towards the next, the lines were different. And for example, Primož chose to go this way. Most of it from this group, we will see later, they chose to follow just the course line. And for example, Aljaž, even though he was flying together with Krka, he decided to make a big detour around it. But all he really needed was the two now box. The two now box was telling him where to go, but he was making all the other decisions, watching the clouds or making whatever decisions he was going to make. He thought were good. So, and all these different routes actually brought, even though people were pretty much together on the previous turn point and they took really different strategies towards the next turn point, they arrived more or less together. And from here on in, they were already thinking about the final glide. Let's discuss the final glides. Especially here, but well, everywhere in the Alps, everywhere where it's not flat, you have to understand what the valley winds will be doing. The locals, talk to the locals before you take off if you don't know the area. Normally, people who live here, even the old guys living in the village, they will know what the wind is doing. And when if the wind changes, they will know, okay, now the weather is changing. It will be different tomorrow. It's always nice to talk to people like that. It's important to know what L over D your glider can do. Mostly they are all around 10, so you can do 10 kilometers from 1 kilometer altitude. But sometimes if you're flying downwind, your L over D will be better. If the valley wind here is stronger, it will not be as good. So before you start your final glide, it's good to have an idea what L over D you can achieve. You can do that by simply knowing, by trying the previous day. You can do that by selecting an now box which is telling you what your L over D is. Of course, the traditional way to calculate your final glide is to know how many meters above goal you will get there. But this calculation actually needs a lot of information from a very theoretical polar curve, which is always approximated with a second degree polynomial, and then you make a tangent on it, and then you calculate what speed you need to fly to reach the goal with the best glide ratio or whatever. And then you have the McCready theory with higher speeds for better last thermal. But these mathematical equations, they are very susceptible to to errors. So if your numbers for the polar are slightly wrong, your final glide will be very wrong, because this is extrapolation from where you are, and then you calculate where you are going to be in 15 kilometers. Calculating final glide with glider polar and calculating how many meters above your goal you will get is possible, theoretically, but very often you will be very disappointed about the quality of this information which you had 15 kilometers ago. If you knew that you will have so favorable wind, you would start your final glide earlier. If you knew that the valley wind will be so strong, you would continue to climb in a 2-meter thermal which you had on the 15th kilometer. It is much easier to calculate your final glide if you calculate the current L over D which you are achieving. And the nicest thing about calculating your final glides with L over Ds is that it is completely separated from your wing, your polar, from whatever wind is influencing you, and even the lift that you are getting on the ridge. If you are flying in an air which allows you to fly at 20-to-1 L over D, and you see that the ridge is continuing ahead of you and the wind is still in your favor, then you could just continue your final glide with a 20-to-1 L over D. And what is, because all you need to calculate this is your altitude, which is very easy to calculate. You have your altitude here, you know the altitude of your finish, and you know the distance to finish, even if there are some waypoints between your position and the finish. So the distance from where you are in kilometers divided by your altitude in kilometers is exactly the L over D which you need to achieve to reach the goal. And if you already know that it will be easy to fly 11.2 L over D to finish, you are okay. You can start your final glide. And sometimes it will be 15, sometimes it will be 20, but sometimes with headwind it will be maybe 5 or 6 or whatever. But none of this is influenced by anything that you put into the instrument. Everything is just according to what you are achieving on task. In this example which we have, we actually have a very nice example of how different the final glides can be. I will just move this ahead to where Primož and Marko got their last thermal. We will switch to three-dimensional view to get a better idea of what they were doing. Just show there. So this is the information in the bottom is about Primož and Hrga. So they get into one position where they both go get a thermal. Primož is already on the ridge. Hrga is flying slightly lower. He's just 50 meters lower, but he's not exactly on the ridge. He's slightly away from the ridge. If we turn like this, look, Hrga is here and Primož is here. So Primož gets 3.5 meters climb, and he will climb 700 meters in this climb. He's here. He will go right up. And Hrga, who's just 50 meters lower but slightly away from him, gets only 1.8 meters climb. He decides he will only climb 270 meters and then start his final glide. This is how it looked like. That was very quick. So Primož starts his final glide. He's here on top of his last thermal, and Hrga is already here. Primož is at 1,800 meters, although he was just 50 meters above him a few minutes ago. And Hrga, he goes from 1,350 meters, and this, for both of them, this was the last climb of the day. They make the final glide. We'll have a side view of this, so here we go. Marko Iris Sushan. They were together just a few minutes ago. And what do they do? Good. There we go. Primož is catching up, catching up, catching up. Catching up, catching up, and in the end, he reaches the goal just a few meters ahead of Marko. Marko's last final glide was slower. He was flying just 44 kilometers per hour on average on the final glide, and for Primož, he was flying 50. This is average. So because Marko was flying slower, he did a better L over D, and Primož did a worse L over D. So they were together before they started the last thermal, and they were practically together when they finished. And this is the difference. This is the nice thing about gliding. You can do very different things, and in the end, everything just comes together, and there is very little difference in what you have done and what you have not. So, if you do it right, you're allowed to watch the other guys coming. This is Primož and Tilen and Yuri waiting for the other guys at PVC in France a few weeks ago, where they won the whole task. Oh, so it was in Sopot. Just waiting for the other guys to finish. Maybe I'm not the right guy to tell you what you should do, but I can tell you that there are so many options in all of your instruments. You can set up, just in audio, you can set up something like 70 different now boxes, which you can look at in the air, which are supposed to help you get back faster. But the rule of thumb is just keep it simple. We have identified just 3 information which are really needed for you to reach the goal. You need a good time to go. You need to know exactly when to go, so you can start together with the group. This is what you need before the start. You need to know where to go on the task. You need to always know where the shortest route to finish is. If you make detours, you have to know why you are making the detours. And for the finish, you just have to know what L over D you can achieve. These are simple numbers. These are numbers which are not going to change very rapidly. They will change just very slowly, so you can rely on these numbers. And this is really everything that you need. Everything else is here and here.
In your stick.
Yeah, yours, go. This was all that Tilen and I prepared for you. We are very much willing to answer any questions if you would like to ask. Otherwise, we will wish you a very pleasant evening. Yes, we can.
For me, I always use the final glide we were talking.
For me, I always use the final glide. I use the altitude above goal. So, as you as an expert, you can tell me which side has better options and which side has worse options.
When I fly races, okay, let me admit, I don't fly with these 3 now boxes. I keep a few more now boxes on the screen. I do keep the altitude above goal also on screen, but just as an indication, just as a proof that all the other now boxes are showing me the right information. But I always try to make my final glides with comparing. With task L over D, I also add a current L over D, which is my average for the last 2 minutes, my average glide ratio for the last 2 minutes. And when my current glide ratio to finish is better than the task L over D, then I know I'm doing better, and the task L over D is going to go down and down and down until it goes down to 10 or 8 or whatever, where I'm really confident that I can do, and then you can push through. The problem with the altitude above goal is that it can show you that you have excess altitude. Maybe you have 500 meters more altitude than you need. And then this altitude starts to go down slowly. But you don't know how quickly it's going down. So you don't know whether it will go into minus just before the finish line or just after the finish line. If it goes after the finish line, you're fine. But you don't have the information how quickly it's going down. And you cannot do this just by watching the numbers and have a feeling. Whereas compared to the L over D numbers, if the current L over D is just slightly less than your task L over D, it already tells you when you are far away that if you continue like this, your arrival altitude to goal will be minus when you get there. So you know when you are high, you already know that if it goes like this, you will not reach your goal. So you can change your plan when you are still high and you have many options. This is the main advantage of L over D's over arrival altitude. But I admit I also keep it on just for reference. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.